Hello, I am Sophronia Scott, Director of the Alma College MFA in Creative Writing, and this is Faculty Friday. This is your opportunity to learn more about the wonderful faculty that we have available to work with you one-on-one on your writing. And today I'm delighted to introduce to you the newest member of our faculty, Shonda Buchanan, who writes across genre, fiction, nonfiction, and poetry. Shonda is a Pushcart Prize nominee, a USC Los Angeles Institute for the Humanities Fellow, and a Department of Cultural Affairs of Los Angeles Master Artist Fellow. Shonda is the author of 5 books, including the award-winning memoir, Black Indian. An award-winning poet, fiction, nonfiction writer, and educator, Shonda has been a journalist for over 25 years, publishing in the Los Angeles Times, the LA Weekly, AWP's The Writer's Chronicle, Los Angeles Times Magazine, Indian Country Today, and the International Review of African American Art. President of Beyond Baroque Literary Arts Center's Board of Trustees, Shonda is also a Sundance Institute Writing Arts Fellow, a Penn Center Emerging Voices Fellow, and a Gentel Artist Residency Fellow. Finalist for the 2021 Michigan Review Poetry Contest, Shonda's memoir, Black Indian, won the 2020 Indie New Generation Book Award and was chosen by PBS NewsHour as a top 20 books to read to learn about institutional racism. Shonda is writing on Tongva Chumash land, and she is currently shopping her book of poetry about Nina Simone. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So we are speaking with each other, and that's dialogue. And we are talking today about dialogue in our writing.
Exactly. It's interesting. For me, dialogue is one of the most important elements of fiction, nonfiction, and even sometimes poetry. It's one of my favorite things to do. It's interesting how you can use dialogue instead of imagery. You can use dialogue to create the mannerism of a character. And you can also use dialogue as a way to propel the story forward, in fact. So there are a couple of different ways when I'm teaching dialogue. I talk to my students about how the way someone says something could be mannerism. So someone could say something a little bit slowly, and you can kind of create that in the actual dialogue within the quotes itself. You're sometimes leaving off the T's, because in spoken language, we usually say, I really want to do X, Y, and Z, as opposed to I want to do X, Y, and Z. So there's that sense of just the mannerism of how someone says something. And then also there's that element of what we call colloquialism, or kind of that regional dialogue, where someone comes from. So for example, I come from Kalamazoo, Michigan. I was born and raised in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And when I started foraging out into the rest of the world, coming to Los Angeles, California, I would say things like fair in the Midland, which someone in California or Los Angeles would look at me like, what is she saying? In Michigan, fair in the Midland means I'm okay, everything's all right, right? So if I put that in my father would say fair in the Midland. And if I said my father looked at me and said fair in the Midland, I would understand what that means. And then the narration around it would kind of give a sense of a sense of this is what it actually, what my father meant, right?
Right.
But the way in which someone says something is that mannerism, and then the regionality should also come out in the use of your dialogue. Let your characters live in how they say something, in the language that they say, and what you impart. And don't be embarrassed about that, because some people will say, oh my gosh, my people in, I say the Midwest, some people have said, a friend of mine in the Appalachians, other people in different parts of America, they don't speak proper English. I can't even tell you what they said, but that's a good story. Give us what they said, show us what they said, what they say.
Well, also in speaking, in real life, we don't necessarily speak in complete sentences.
Mhm.
So, and yet we still needed to work on the page.
Mhm.
So how do we balance that between, creating a sentence that people will understand, but also making it authentic in the way you're discussing?
Well, it's interesting because there are a couple of things happening there. You have the sense of, so you have your dialogue. This is when you start crafting. You have your dialogue, and then maybe you have action, or you'll have dialogue, and then you'll have an image or imagery, or dialogue, action, image, internal dialogue. So there are elements that have to play together, that have to live together on the page. But then also, a way to use dialogue to create tension is if a character asks a question of someone, generally in speaking, we don't necessarily answer people's questions all the time. So this is a way to kind of create tension depending on what's going on in your story. A character asks a question, another character ignores it. So maybe the narration says she ignores the question and asked, or not even and asked, but she ignored the question. She asks another pointed question to elevate the tension of the story. So the use of dialogue, and a lot of first beginning writers don't realize that dialogue can do so many things for your story to make it an authentic story. And but then again, characters cutting each other off creates tension. As a reader, you're not actually going to be thinking about, oh my gosh, that character didn't answer the question. What you're really going to be thinking about or feeling is what's happening between these characters. Something is happening. I really want to know what's going on.
And it sounds like the way you're describing it, that if you build tension in that way, if you use mannerism, if you use authenticity, then you won't need that thing that I think too many writers lean on, which is the adverb, right? To say
Yeah.
he said sweetly, right? He said nastily,
He
gruffly.
moved slowly. He looked at her slyly,
Yes.
right? So yeah, dialogue can cut your adverbs out, and for the most part, and just go straight for the what is happening, the what needs to be said, or what the character will actually say. It's interesting. One of my friends, Tony Ann Johnson, who wrote a beautiful collection of short stories called Light Skin Gone to Waste. And it actually comes out in October. I've been telling people they should get it now, but it comes out in October. But there's a scene in one of the short stories between a father and a daughter. And the father asks a question, and the daughter's really ticked off about something. She does not answer the question. She asks her own question, right? Which elevates that tension, that misunderstanding, that the sense of, I guess, the volatility between of the relationship of those characters, and that it happens in dialogue. And then also she does add some narrative in between there too. But we're really waiting for, like, what is the father going to ask again? Is the daughter going to confront the father about this? In the language. So there's a lot of like great intrigue, intention in that particular episode and in the entire book.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that with us, Shonda, because I do think that these details are so important, and it's so easy to take dialogue for granted.
It
So,
really is, yeah.
so thank you for joining us today. She is Shonda Buchanan. I'm Sophronia Scott, and we are with the Alma College MFA in Creative Writing. We are currently recruiting for our next residency, and I hope you will be with us. You can learn more about the program at alma.edu/MFA. And this was Faculty Friday. Thank you.